love it. Oh boy. Oh boy. There is some fun to be had making live streams on Facebook. Well, pen's not good. Oh, good. There's some people coming back in. No fun. No fun, that. Cuvée. Tirage. What comes next there? Second ferment. Hi everybody, I see some people are coming back in. Not thrilled that my computer just restarted. Halfway through live stream, whole computer just suddenly went dark, booted itself back up. And there's some issues with Facebook live streaming that I'm not thrilled with. But nevertheless, we are back, or at least a few of us are, and hopefully more people will kind of stagger in. I'm taking this opportunity to write some things up on this whiteboard, because boy oh boy do I love writing things on whiteboards. I hope everyone's enjoying that Stoneboat Bubble Brewed. I haven't even opened mine yet because I was going to do it on camera. Let's get around to it. I was talking about how cool Stoneboat is as a winery, and how neat Lanny is as an owner. Oh. So, Lanny was a pioneer, is still a pioneer, but has been for 40 years in the wine industry. And like I said, he's been involved and influential in the creation of the BC Winery Institute, BC Wine Institute, the BC Grape Growers Association. And he's also a big proponent of sort of sustainable vineyard practices. He's basically an exemplar of how to maintain a renewable, functional, biodynamic vineyard. And in fact, he has, this is absolutely incredible, a number of vineyard sections, a number of grapevines that are self-rooted. And this might make absolutely no sense if you haven't listened to the most recent edition of my podcast, Uncork the Sun, with the Vinstitute Wine School, where I talk about the dangers of phylloxera, this nasty mite that'll get in and devour your grapevines unless you graft them on top of other rootstock. But Lanny has these nice protected patches where he has Pinot Noir grapes growing on their own rootstock, which is quite unique and special. This right here is the product of something that Lanny brought in to British Columbia. He was the first person to bring it into British Columbia. He's not the only one now. A number of others have followed suit. But what I'm talking about is a charmat tank. Let's go ahead. Let's pour a little bit of the wine right here, because I just can't bear to have it just sitting open. So let's whoop. There we go. Got to get the right contrast. I know things are a little bit fuzzy there, a little bit blurry, but beautiful mousse on that, really fine bubble. That's one of the things that you look for when you are pouring and tasting sparkling wine. You look at the quality of the bubble. You look at whether it's a broad, coarse, heavy bubble, or whether it's a very fine kind of needlepoint bubble. And that will usually give you an impression of the way that the compression and carbonation has gone during the process of second fermentation, in which you pressurize that wine. Now, I was just writing out the different stages of traditional method winemaking: lees, contact, and then you have riddling, which I'll remind you was when you turn the bottles, and then you have disgorging. And then you have, finally, the little dosage of sweet juice at the end, to make sure that it is an appropriate sweetness level. Now, this is how you make traditional method sparkling, but the way that that Lanny's team over at Stoneboat makes their wine is using a method that that involves a charmat tank. And a charmat tank is a specialized pressurized tank that allows you to skip a number of these steps. You remember I said that the way that you make a traditional method sparkling wine is you make a wine and then you make another wine on top of it inside of the bottle. And so for traditional method sparkling, you have, thousands of bottles of wine, and each one of those has a tiny other second wine made on top of it. It is absolutely painstaking. A charmat tank still involves the cuvee. You still create your initial base wine. And in this case, for this particular wine right here, the Bubbleboat Brut integrates a number of different whites. It has Pinot Blanc, it has Schönberger, it has Müller-Thurgau, and it has Kerner. There's 4 different white wines that go into it, and it smells fantastic. It has 4 different white wines that are all harvested and produced independently, and then those 4 wines are then combined together into the cuvee. But then instead of being bottled, they are then put into a giant pressurized tank called a charmat tank. When I say giant, it's not actually that big, but it's put into a charmat tank. And all of these processes right here, the tirage, that little extra addition of yeast, that goes directly into the charmat tank. And all of the wine is kind of brewed up together. And then after a few weeks, it's then bottled directly out of the charmat tank. So you skip the need to do all the riddling, the hand turning, having every individual wine be a little bit different, and you get right to the very end, which is that you bottle it. And it allows a little bit finer control in terms of the overall consistency of the wine, and it tends to also allow for a wine that has more of a freshly made character. And when you smell this wine right here, this does not smell bready. It doesn't smell yeasty. It smells bright. It smells exciting. It hasn't had the lees aging, so it isn't as dense. There's a really clean, vibrant liveliness to it, and that is because it was made in these charmat tanks. Now, like I said, Stoneboat were the progenitors of this. They were the first people in British Columbia to have charmat tanks. Since then, there have been a number of others that have got charmat tanks, but they are still rare. They're still few and far between. So when you have the opportunity to try a wine that is made in a charmat tank, jump at the opportunity, because it's a really fresh and bright way to try sparkling wine as a bit of an alternative. So you may notice that I'm swirling it. How do you feel about that? Because I'm fine with it. You see, some people will tell you that you should not swirl your sparkling wine because it ruins the bubble. The bubble, by the way, we call it the mousse. That's the classy word that we use for the bubbles on top. And so swirling the wine, it's true that it does kind of pound down, it does kind of reduce the mousse, but it's still going to make it smell better. Swirling your wine, oxidizing your wine is always going to bring out aroma. I see Jen shouting no. Too bad, Jen. I'm swirling this wine and you can't stop me. So I'm swirling this wine to just unleash more, aromatics. And like I said, that is totally personal preference. Some people will choose to keep their sparkling wine still so that they get more of that bubble. But what you'll find is that when you go to taste it, the bubble is still there. The bubble is still there. It still hits your tongue. It doesn't look as bubbly, but it still tastes as bubbly. Speaking of which, time to have a sip. That's beautiful. It's a really lovely wine. It has a little bit of sweetness to it, but sparkling wine is fascinating. The presence of the bubble enhances acid. It enhances the perception of acid, I should say. The natural carbonation always makes a wine taste drier. Think about just tasting, sparkling soda water. There's something always a little bit grippy, a little bit tart about it, and it's this enhancement by the bubble. And then there's the fact that we tend to pick our grapes for the cuvee. The initial harvest is done earlier than you would normally pick, so that you get kind of brighter, cleaner, more vibrant acidity. And so that carries right through to the end. And so this is a wine that it has around 10 or 11 grams of sugar. So it's on the upper end of the category of brut. It is technically brut. It says it right in the name. But it's it isn't as sweet as a 10 gram of sugar per liter still wine would seem. If you were tasting any of these just in their normal white format, table wines, non-sparkling, this would taste a lot sweeter. But that early harvest for the bright acid, the bubble, means that this is a really balanced wine. This is so incredibly drinkable. I was talking to Levi, the general manager over at Stoneboat today, when I was picking this wine up from her. And she was saying that amongst the staff, they talk about how this is a wine that you never see in people's fridges. And it's because people are buying it, but they're drinking it as soon as they get it home. It's not something you ever go over to a friend's house and you find sitting in the fridge because it's gone already. It's a really, really approachable, really drinkable wine. And as far as sparkling wines go, I think it's really easy to step into. Some people are not huge fans of sparkling wine, and it could be because they're used to drier formats or much breadier styles of sparkling. And some people are also off-put by price point. And admittedly, sparkling wine is difficult to make. All these steps right here mean that a traditional method sparkling necessarily is going to cost more money. And so, all of these things can be factors to put people off the idea of sparkling wine. But this right here, not only is it really bright, really refreshing, really, really easy to drink. It has these bright tropical fruit characteristics. I'm getting mango. I'm getting passion fruit. It's really intoxicating. But as well as all of these things, it's also really inexpensive. It comes in at what is it, $20? Yeah, it's $20. $20 for a bottle of sparkling wine. That's almost impossible to see. Typically, certainly using traditional methods, but that charmat tank means that you can produce the wines on a larger scale, skip out a lot of the most labor-intensive steps, and therefore make something that is a lot more cost-effective, just because of the economy of scale there. This is just a fantastic wine. I love this wine. So once again, I just want to reiterate that swirling the wine will bring out more of the aromatic quality. And I see what Dale said there in the comment. It is admittedly hard to swirl when you have a champagne flute, but you do wind up getting more of those aromatics if you can manage to do a little bit of swirl. And the bubble does persist. You still get that sparkle. You still get that tingle, that dancing on the tongue. Back in the flapper days, back in the old Great Gatsby era, they used the big broad bowls, right? They had those sort of what they were called coupe glasses, where they were broad like that. And the idea there was that you got more oxygen exposure. You had larger surface area that was capturing more oxygen. You still couldn't swirl because they were, an inch high, and so you had this sort of koi pond of sparkling wine. But it is really interesting how the shapes of sparkling wine glasses have kind of expanded and constricted, and always seem to be a little bit anti-oxidization, which is not my side of the party there. But I'm quite fond of the tulip shape. You get these sort of diamond-shaped sparkling wine glasses. I love that because it means that you can give it a nice swirl, capture it inside, but it still kind of compresses the nose in the way that a flute would. All right. Stoneboat, what else can we say about them? They are currently open. I know not every tasting bar is open these days, but Stoneboat is. They are open 7 days a week. They are preferring people to call ahead with reservations. They don't want to turn people away if you do just show up in their parking lot looking for a tasting, but they can't necessarily ensure that you'll be able to get into the bar. So they are recommending that if you want to come out here for a visit, you give them a call ahead of time and you book a tasting. If you have never been to Stoneboat, then shame on you. You absolutely need to go visit them because they are the only Pinot house in the area, which means that they specialize in things like Pinot Noir. They have Pinot Blanc, they have Pinot Gris, Pinot Tage, which is something that is quite rare to come across. And so they have their focus. They do a great job. Also, I see that my wife and probably my 5-year-old son is getting ready to go to bed. So good night, Orion. Sleep well, buddy. I'll see you tomorrow. And also, why are you watching this? You're not allowed to drink. So, anyways, Stoneboat open 7 days a week, doing a great job. They also make multiple different sparkling wines using the charmat method. I see Jen just mentioned that. Perfect timing. The Piano is a magnificent wine, and basically everything they produce is worth trying. The other note to say about Stoneboat is that they are offering. Yes, what are they offering here? Did I write it down? I did. Free shipping. I've got a big word there, free, right? I should have seen that. They're offering free shipping within British Columbia. So if you want to order some of this Bubbleboat Brut, $20 a bottle, ridiculous. You can get it shipped to you for free within British Columbia, or you can even find this at the Save On Foods, at Everything Wine, private liquor stores. You can find it all around the province at any of these locations. So there is your sort of paragon of the charmat production method. Next, we are going to talk about a third method. We've already discussed traditional method, although we haven't tasted the wine yet. And I don't want to pour it out. It's good. And now we've talked about the charmat method. It's time for us to try something new. This is the brand new Silver Sage Sparkling Velvet. This is a very exciting wine because this is the first time in 25 years that Silver Sage Winery, which started up in 1996. 1996. So well more than 20 years old. Silver Sage has developed a fantastic reputation for having not only some incredibly fun, vibrant, lovely, fruit-rich wines, but also having one of the most entertaining and satisfying tasting bar experiences in British Columbia, nay, Canada. I would say that if you have not visited Silver Sage, then obviously you don't know anybody that lives in the Okanagan. Because what you do is, when you have visitors come to see you in Oliver or Soyuz, you take them to Silver Sage. It doesn't matter if they like wine or not. It doesn't matter if they're aficionados or novices. You bring them to Silver Sage because it is hard to rival the vigor and enthusiasm that any of the employees at Silver Sage are able to somehow manage to press into every single tasting with every single guest, despite their packed tasting bars. Usually, it's really just an incredible experience. And so, once again, I just have to keep saying this. I say this for every winery, but I really do mean it. If you haven't been to Silver Sage, good grief, you need to go. Right now, obviously, they are reining things back in because of the various precautions for COVID-19 to kind of keep everybody safe. Anna, the owner, I was talking to her today. She was saying she's being extremely cautious about keeping everybody safe. They are usually such a busy tasting bar. They are arguably the most busy tasting bar in the Okanagan, I would say. And so they are having professional cleaners come in every evening. They're sanitizing between groups, but they're also having professional cleaners come in every single night. They're using UV to clean as well as regular sanitizers. So they really are pulling out all the stops. And what's more, even though they are only allowing small groups into their tasting bar at a time, right? The standard around here in the Okanagan is 6 people per group into a tasting bar. they are allowing larger groups outside in their sort of patio area. They have enough space to allow larger larger groups of people. And so if you happen to be in a large group doing a wine tour, that's a good spot to go, because a lot of other places aren't going to have the capacity to take you in. Silver Sage, sparkling velvet. By the way, this is how you open a bottle of sparkling wine if you don't want to put somebody's eye out. I am not going to be sabering any wine here today. That would be really fun. But I don't want to damage my already fragile setup here by smashing my camera or my pretty microphone. So I'm going to do it the safe way. So what I did is I took the cage off, carefully took the cage off. So now I just have this little mushroom of a cork, and normally I would have a cloth. Right, imagine I'm the server at your table. I would have my bar cloth, and I would take that cloth and I would hold it in this hand, and I would just clutch the cork in my palm, and then I'm just going to turn the bottle. I'm going to hold the cork steady, but I'm going to turn the bottle, and as I turn the bottle, it just, whoop, there you go. See, pops out really quick, really simple. It doesn't go exploding. It doesn't shatter any of my lights. It just goes just like that. And so, wasn't that fun? Wasn't that classy? And then, of course, because I'm your server, I've also turned it so that you can always see the label. You always have to present it so that you can see the label. That's just good common sense, good salesmanship. All right, let's taste this. I'm really excited because things like the Bubbleboat, things like the Ella, pretty much all the wines that I've tried in any of these live streams, I've tasted them before. I know them. I'm familiar with them. Some of the reasons that I'm choosing them is because I know that they're good for their options. This is a wine that I haven't tried before because it was just released. This is its first vintage, and I'm just so excited to try it. So let's see here. That's nice. See that lovely mousse? I know you can't really tell, but there's a little bit of pigment to it. Has a slight sort of lemon yellow tone, a little bit gold. Lovely looking wine. This is, I'm assuming, a fantastic example. I mean, I haven't tried it yet, but I'm excited. Okay, right away. This is going to be a fantastic example of the third type of sparkling wine production. Number 1, traditional method. Number 2, charmat tank. Number 3 is maybe the most logical and probably the place that a lot of people would go to for modern wine production, where they would assume, which is basically CO2 injection. You take your cuvée, except instead of making something a little bit rough, you make your finished wine. You make a wine that is precise and perfect. It isn't too acidic. It isn't too dry, right? And its alcohol level is more or less where you want it to be. And then you do a little spritz. You add a little bit of carbonation to it in the same way that you did with sort of soda pop or whatnot. And so this wine right here is a very precise, very cleanly made wine that then has been made sparkling. And there are some fantastic examples of these within the Okanagan, these kind of CO2 injection. Riverstone has made a beautiful white Merlot that's been injected with a little bit of that sparkle, which just makes for a really, really lovely wine. And it means that you get to make something a lot more carefully before you then do a lot of other steps to it. And this wine right here, this is a good example of sort of the signature of Silver Sage. Silver Sage is well known for having wines that combine grapefruit with grapes, the fruit that is called grape. I'm not saying grapefruit, although there's irony there. They combine grapes with other types of fruit. So they'll have a wine that is grapes together with peach, or grapes together with blueberry, something along those lines. This right here is Gewürztraminer, which is already as sort of an aromatic Germanic white. Gewürztraminer is bright, it is refreshing, it has a sweet nose to it, often smells a bit like lychee fruit. So it's Gewürztraminer that then actually has apricot, pineapple, and grapefruit. So it is these different fruits all kind of melded together, and what you get is just this doubling down, this extra intensity of the fruit characteristics. And right away on the nose, it smells like a San Pellegrino. It smells so tropical, so bright, and it's a little bit zesty, right? You know, you've got that little kind of cleanness coming through. I'm dancing. Oh boy. Oh, this is good. All right, I have to try this. I can't wait to taste it here. This is such a good wine. I am so excited to take this home for my wife to drink it tonight. She's just gonna go nuts for this, because the fruit flavors are so palpable and so rich. Well, I said before that it tastes like a San Pellegrino. That it really does. It has a tropical fresh fruit flavor. There's just enough acid, right? It's not overly sweet. It has a little bit of sweetness to it. And certainly, I mean, if you like sweet wines, Silver Sage has some wines that are really deliciously, intensely sweet. But they also make some wonderful dry wines. I think some people know them for their sweet wines, their dessert options, and they forget that they make some beautiful dry choices. And this right here, this is just slightly in the off dry, like you know, you might call it what would you call it here? Maybe extra dry. That would be sort of your 12 to 17 grams of sugar per liter. You know, it kind of tastes somewhere in that range. But the acid is clean enough that you're getting these sort of lemon lime flavors as well. Now, Anna, the owner, she said that she likes to drink this with strawberries. She'll cut strawberries and put them into the glass. And it's just such a fun wine. You can think of all these different pairing combinations of different foods that you would have with it. I mean, I would love to have this with the first thing that I thought was meringue, which is maybe an odd place to go for wine pairings. But when you have this kind of really crisp, sizzling, delicate nature to it right here, and this crisp, clean acid. Something a little bit heavy, a little bit sticky. It would cut right through a nice meringue. Anyways, that was the first thing I thought right there. I'm not the food and wine pairing expert. Ah, boy, this is really nice. This is not a wine that you're going to be able to find all over. Anna and Silver Sage, they sell a little bit through private liquor stores. But generally speaking, you're probably going to have to get it directly from the winery. This comes in after tax at around $26, so it's still an absolute steal. And she only made 500 cases of it, which you know, initially it was the first time making a sparkling wine for this business that's been around for, you know, more than 25 years, right? And so first time making a sparkling wine. She wanted to test the water. She wanted to see whether or not it would land, right? Makes sense. And she said that already she's blown through most of her stock, and she's going to have to produce more and bottle more in July. So that means that you are still currently able to get your hands on it, but if you don't do it fast, you might have to wait a few weeks for them to catch up in production. That's just a magnificent wine. It is an absolute fantastic summer sipper, yes. Once again, just to reiterate, That is the Silver Sage Sparkling Velvet. If you have the opportunity to get your hands on this wine by ordering it from the winery, please do. But also, if you have the chance to come here to the Okanagan and visit them in person, Anna said that out of everything that's happened in the last couple of months, the most tragic thing of all is just seeing her parking lot empty. She's not used to it. She doesn't know how to deal with it. So please come for a visit and enjoy this wine in person. There will be more of it soon if it runs out. All right, we've got one final wine that we're going to talk about today, and we're using it to talk about. The classical method of producing wine. Of producing sparkling wine. Sorry, I'm still so distracted. The sparkling velvet, it just tastes so good. We are talking about a traditional method sparkling wine. And our winery of choice for this was Maverick Estate Winery. Now, some of you may be familiar with Maverick. They opened up in 2013. They opened up in 2013, and Maverick was founded by the winemaker and winemaking consultant and vineyard operator and general all-around ubermensch of winemaking, Bertus Albertin, who is from South Africa originally, came out here to the Okanagan in I think it was 2009, something around those lines. And Bertus initially was working for Burrowing Owl, did some work with a couple other companies, and then started his own little family vineyard just immediately south of Castoro de Oro, right on the main highway between Oliver and Osoyoos. And Maverick has kind of quickly gained a lot of reputation and renown for being a small artisanal handcrafted winery where the wines are of a really exemplary quality. And a lot of that has been because of the kind of singular passion and intent of Bertus as a winemaker. But it's worth noting that Maverick has just recently changed hands. And everybody that I know is really quite excited to see what's going to happen with Maverick coming up. It's been purchased by two alumni of Tinhorn Creek, actually, Andrew Windsor, a former winemaker for Tinhorn Creek, and Jan Nelson, also of Tinhorn Creek, former marketing manager of Tinhorn Creek. And the two of them have purchased Maverick. And they're going to be helming it. They've said in interviews that they've always had incredible respect for Bertus, and certainly he's a guy within the industry that a lot of people around here look up to and admire. And so it's very fun, the idea of them kind of taking the mantle and taking over Maverick and seeing what they can do with the wines coming forward. So very exciting, the idea of seeing what Maverick is going to bring out in sort of the vintages to come. But this right here, this is a classic from around 2016. This is the Maverick Ella. It is called Ella after one of Bertus's daughters. He has two daughters, Ella and Sophia. He names his sparkling wine after one of them, Ella, and his port-style wine, which is called Fia, after his other daughter, Sophia. So that's kind of cute. I just wanted to show you something quick as I'm doing this here. I've undone the cage, but if you did want to saber your bottle of wine, if you're sitting at home and you're thinking to yourself, I want to hit something with a sword or even a butter knife, then look no further. What you want to do is, step one, you chill your wine really cold. You probably put it in the freezer. You want it to be ice cold. I've had this sitting out for an hour, so this is a bad choice for it. I'm not going to do it. The next thing that you do is you take your cage, you undo it, but then, for safety, you want to redo it under the first lip, right? There's the two lips of the bottle. Normally, it's underneath the second. You undo it, raise it up, and do it under the first lip of the bottle. This is just going to keep things from exploding while you are working on it, while you're sabering it. Then, you would want to strip off the capsule from the neck right here. So you get a nice clean bottle. And then you're going to want to find the seam. Every bottle has a seam where the glass is kind of connected. And you'll find this little ridge. You'll take that ridge, and then you go ahead and you get your sword or your butter knife or whatnot. It does not need to be sharp. In fact, it should be kind of hard and rigid. And if you're using an actual like cavalry saber, left to you by your Confederate grandfather, I won't ask any questions. What you're going to want to do is turn it over so you use the back of that sword, and you're going to touch it along the seam, and then give it a little rub, and then you're just going to smack as hard as you can on the bottom of the second lip. You are not going to hit it. By no means ever should you hit your neck of your bottle, because it's just going to, it's going to ruin your hands. You're going to wind up in the emergency room. So what you instead want to do is you just want to move fluidly upwards, and then boom, you're going to strike underneath there with the base of your sword. It might take you a couple tries to kind of get used to it, but then bang, what'll happen is the glass will just break off on the top. It'll explode out, and you'll still have, a functional bottle of wine, albeit sharper. So that is how you saber a bottle of wine. Again, I am not doing it because I don't want to destroy my Vinstitute classroom right here. So instead, I'm just going to do, if you missed it last time, the way that you safely open a bottle of sparkling wine, which is you simply take that cork, you put it into the palm of your hand, and then you turn the bottle underneath it. You hold the cork tight, you turn that bottle, and there. Did you see that? Or did you hear that? It was so subtle, so clean. That's how you do it sneaky like, so that your roommates don't know that you're opening a bottle of sparkling wine. All right, Maverick Ella. I said that this is from 2016, but it's worth noting that that the wine is non-vintaged. That is commonplace in traditional method sparkling wines. It's something that you can get away with. In fact, the idea of a vintage is a kind of almost a relatively new concept. A lot of traditional wines would be non-vintaged unless it was a really special year. That's where the concept of saying that something it's a vintage year. Oh, this was a vintage year. 2014 in the Okanagan, vintage year. Right? 2012, vintage year. The reason that you say that is because in champagne production, normally you take multiple years and you blend them all together. A little bit of 2015, a little bit of 2016. You add a few things together and you make your wine out of that. And it's a balancing act to try to, again, engineer the wine to be as good as it possibly can be. Do you see the beautiful bubble? How the bubble is still going? How the bubble is still persisting? One of the things that you get from traditional method sparkling is a really long-lasting mousse, a mousse that tends to last longer than the other production methods. Anyways, in champagne production, when you have one really special year, a fantastic year, they would call that a vintage year. And that's when they would finally stamp the year on the bottle. And that would be a much more expensive bottle of wine. That would be something much more prestigious. And so it's not uncommon at all to see bottles of wine like this that just do not have the year on them, non-vintage sparkling wine. And yeah, this is no exception. I will tell you one thing. And this is maybe proprietary secret, but Molly, who was the assistant winemaker until just recently, I was asking her about this wine, and she said that it's non-vintaged not because they mixed multiple years, but because every single bottle of Ella is hand-labeled. Hand-labeled. They do not use machines for this. Every bottle made totally by hand. Everything about it was done in-house. They weren't sending the wine away. They were doing it all themselves, Berdis and Molly. And they did the wines non-vintaged so that they didn't have to print new labels for every single vintage. They could just reuse the same labels on every single wine. And I respect that a lot. I think that's wonderful. So, beautiful looking wine. This is the sort of proper, not only is it traditional in the way that it's made, but it's also traditional in terms of the cuvée. This is the proper blend of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And it is, from Molly's notes here, about 85% Pinot Noir and 15% Chardonnay. So it is more Pinot than it is Chard. Champagne, in its truest fashion, is kind of rosé. If you want to learn more about that, go watch our other live stream video where we talk about rosé, and I even mentioned this. So there you go. There's continuity. There's tie-in. It's a beautiful looking wine. Smells absolutely fantastic. Just completely intoxicating right away. And you see that the bubble is still lasting. Maybe you can't see because of my video quality, but there's still the mousse there, even after I've given it a little bit of a swirl. Something that you get from traditional method sparkling wine is more atmospheres of pressure. So let me get my notes here. This is my BC Wine Institute notebook that I just have Vinstitute notes written in, pages and pages and pages of details about different aspects of winemaking. And it says right here that that when you do charmat tank production, you tend to get 2 to 4 atmospheres of pressure. If you're a deep sea diver, then you know that we measure pressure by how many intervals of the Earth's atmosphere are we looking at. Charmat tank creates 2 to 4 different atmospheres, not different, 2 to 4 atmospheres of pressure. Things like CO2 injection tends to give you about 3 atmospheres. So that means that charmat can be less or more pressurized, but CO2 injections tends to sit pretty steadily at 3 atmospheres of pressure. And when you do traditional method, you tend to get 5 or even up to 7 atmospheres of pressure, which means that a traditional method sparkling can be twice as pressurized as an alternative method of sparkling wine production, which is one of the reasons too that the mousse is still persisting. You have that intensity of the pressure. Normally when you would pour yourself a bit of sparkling wine, you would drink it. I prefer to talk for 12 minutes before I take a sip, so I've lost most of the bubble right here in terms of appearance, but the fact that it's stuck around this long, you know, a Moss description length of time, is pretty impressive. So you get a lot of things here, and one of the things is nuttiness. I mentioned before the lees aging, and Molly was telling me that they pick the wine early to get crisp acidity. It's the earliest grapes that they harvest in the season, the Pinot Noir and the Chardonnay, to make their cuvee, and then they keep it for 1 year. When they're making their cuvee, they keep it for 1 year in tank on the lees. So they make their initial wine, which is co-blended together. It's the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir put together, and you keep that inside a tank for 1 year, sitting on its initial lees. Then you rack it off, you bottle it, and then you add in the tirage of a little bit of extra sugar, a little bit of extra yeast, and then it goes through its second fermentation, creates more lees, more of these fine lees, these delicate, velvety, depleted yeast cells, and then they allow it to go for another, what I have here, 2 years, another 2 years in bottle. So it's 3 years producing this wine, and that's just the waiting time. There's more production time on either side. They do 1 year for making the cuvee, and then they do 2 years of lees contact. And what you get there is breadier, nuttier characteristics that really enhance the overall texture of the wine. I mentioned before that lees also give you kind of long string carbohydrates, and so they build up the texture, but it smells like almonds. It has this sort of brioche bread and marzipan tone. What's the German Christmas bread that has the marzipan in it? Is it Stollen? Is it Stollen? It smells a little bit like Stollen, assuming I'm saying the right word. My family's Dutch, so there's fruit from the Pinot Noir, but it's just a little bit of this kind of dried cranberry tone that's in there, which is dried fruit, marzipan, breadiness. It just sounds like a good breakfast. Smells fantastic. Like I said, this is my favorite traditional method sparkling. Not that there are not other absolutely amazing alternatives out there within the whole of Oliver Osoyoos wine country, but this one has a special place in my heart. Comes across so bubbly on the tongue. You get so much of that sparkle, so much of that bubble there. Mm. It's dry. It's delicious. It has beautiful complexity to it. You get more of those bready, more of those nutty flavors coming in. Retronasal, which is how we describe smelling the wine after it's been on your tongue. You know, you have the nose, then you have the palate, and then you have the retronasal expression where the wine wafts off the back of your tongue and you smell it again from the inside of your head. And so you get more of that nuttiness coming in, more of that beautiful almond. The acid is crisp. There's a little bit of sweetness to it. This is the lowest sweetness of the three that we've tried so far. This one's only about 6 grams of sugar per liter. So that's firmly, got to check my book, that would be considered extra brut. That's bruter than brut. And so it is quite dry. It's coming across really lean and really crisp. But no, sorry, I used the wrong word there. It's not lean. There's a richness to the texture. There's a beautiful mouthfeel. It is crisp, yes, but it is not lean. That was me misspeaking. Hmm. There's something really interesting that Molly said to me today on the phone. She said that the dosage, which is, I'll remind you, after you take the chunk of frozen sediment out of the bottle, you then top it up with a little bit of sweet juice, a little bit of sweet wine to bring it to the sweetness level that you want. They actually use a dosage that is based on ice wine. So they go to, she said, proprietary secret. She can't tell us anything more than this, but apparently they go to a local Oliver Osoyoos area winery. They get ice wine from them, and they use the ice wine to top up the wine to 750 mils and give it that tiny hint, 6 grams of residual sugar per liter, which I think is really cool. I'd actually never heard of that process before. I've just heard of using sweetened grape juice, but not ice wine specifically. And maybe there's a little something to the flavor that comes from that. I don't know. Well, fantastic wine, an absolutely brilliant wine. This one comes in at about $35 after tax, and I mean, I would say that's a fantastic price considering the incredible amount of effort and time that goes into making a bottle of wine like this, especially since, like I said, everything is done by hand. They are producing everything right on site. They use special auto gyros for the riddling. That is to say, it's a gigantic mechanical rack that all the bottles are stacked in, and then the whole rack shifts and turns. I remember in the first year that Bertus was making this wine, making it all by himself, and the auto gyros got held up in customs and couldn't get there in time, and he had to just riddle every single bottle by hand. Fortunately, they don't have to do that anymore. They've got the auto gyros, but everything else of this is done totally in-house, right down to the labeling of the bottles, which means that they are all affectionately slightly different. There's always a tiny little bit of, maybe they're not quite on perfectly straight, which I think is very charming. And I'm sure that Bertus would hate it if I said that on camera, but oops, I did. Anyways, it's a really, really beautiful wine. If you want to get your hands on it, you can order it directly from the Maverick website. They are offering 50% off shipping on any order of 6 bottles or more. And once again, you should come and you should visit Maverick in person. They are currently open Thursday through Monday. They only have sort of Tuesdays and Wednesdays off, but you can come to the tasting bar anytime between Thursday and Monday. They are recommending appointments. They're recommending that you call ahead for the same reason that Stoneboat, it's a small space, and so you want to make sure that you're able to get a spot on the tasting bar without waiting too long. Well, there we have it. 3 fantastic wines from 3 really inspirational producers. All three of these are absolute fan favorites within the Okanagan. I'm sure for anybody that's visited, it's a slim chance that if you've come and done a wine tour, you haven't been to at least one of these, if not all three of them. And rightly so, because all three of them are really at the top of their class in terms of producing the sorts of wines that they produce. We have three very different types of wines, all tasting very distinct, and yet all of them very enticing, very attractive. I've already used the term before, but I'm going to use it again. Exemplars of class, right? All of these are kind of paragons, and they all represent different ways of producing one of the most fascinating and complicated and precise and technical methods of making wine. So that is all for tonight, everybody. I hope everybody is going to tune in again 2 weeks from now so that you can see our next live stream tasting. I'm going to be focusing on one grape, which is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be talking about Gamay Noir to explore kind of the softer side of red wines. So I have 3 different Gamay Noirs lined up that I'm going to be using. I've written the information about those in the comments here, and you can find more info about that on our social media. As well, the podcast that I produce for the Winery Association for Oliver Osoyoos Wine Country. We are on episode 5, I believe, where I talk about phylloxera and what that strange word means for wineries and winemaking. But the next episode I produce is actually going to have an interview with somebody that isn't just me. I'll be talking to John Pullen from Second Chapter Wines. I just want to, as one final note here, mention that I'm actually moving away from the Okanagan. So I have had a lot of fun producing these live streams for Oliver Osoyoos Wine Country, and of course living in Oliver Osoyoos Wine Country as I do so. I am going to continue doing these live streams, but I'm going to be doing them from Vancouver Island, which is in relative terms still close to Oliver and Osoyoos. But in the microcosm, you know, it's several small European countries away, which means that it's going to be difficult for me to get out here in person, but I will still be bringing you insight into the different wineries and all the different wines. We'll still be talking about Oliver and Osoyoos in great detail. The podcast will continue, and I'm just going to have to find a new space to do this in. This has been my Vinstitute classroom for the last 4 years. But at the end of this week, I moved to Victoria, and so I have to say goodbye to my classroom, which is going to be very sad. I'm going to take that sign, bring it with me, and I'll take my whiteboard, of course, and I will see you in 2 weeks from a new location. I don't know where. It might be from my parents' patio in Qualicum Beach while I look for a home and a place to live. So we'll have to figure that out as we go. But yes, for all of you who have been watching this live stream and all the previous ones, thank you very much for all of your support. We really appreciate it all. And yeah, cheers. Here, let's do the little glass clink. We're not allowed to do it in person because of germs and things like that. But here you go. Oh, reach out and ding. There we go. All right. See you later, everybody. Now we have the awkward part where I have to click end live video. It takes a little bit